Well, hello and good evening, good morning, good everything, wherever you are in the world, from us here at Aquarius Rising Africa on our beautiful magical Monday. And as you can tell, Morné and I have with us beautiful Brice and beautiful Stephanie for chapter 2. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. How are you doing?
Fantastic.
Good.
Excited to be here with you guys. Mondays are always such a wonderful day to be able to spend it with you guys. You guys, I don't think, Chantelle Morné, I don't think you know how much you actually ground me. Like after I film with you guys, I always feel so much more grounded as a person. And I just have to, and of course, Stephanie and I talk all day, every day. But, it's just so, in a crazy world that we live in right now, it's just so awesome. I was talking with Catherine Edwards this morning about this. It's just so incredibly awesome to have such good friends that keep you grounded, and so I always look forward to this time, even though we get into controversial topics, but
well, it's because we get into controversial topics that we love it, right?
Speaking your truth.
Non-controversial topics aren't fun. The controversial topics are the fun ones.
And I'm so excited that I was invited back for a second week in a row to also get grounded.
I'm so happy to have you, Stephanie. Yeah, it's wonderful. So interesting topic tonight, one that's about, or today, this morning, whatever it is, one that's probably going to get some little tongues wagging again. And, but you know what, guys, we were just also talking off air. What we do here is we put information out there, right? It's not us that's concocting the stories. So just always bear that in mind when you leave your comments. Your comments are welcome, and they're always welcome, but keep them respectful, please. Not everyone agrees, but we're not creating a hodgepodge of stuff. The information is there, and we are simply sharing. And of course, Brice being super duper nerd little researcher here, who I love to death, because that's all the stuff I'm so like, oh no, it's just not my thing. I'd rather be doing other stuff than researching. So I'm very happy that you are there.
I just I like spying on topics and seeing, and the more especially with Mithraism, and this is another reason why I want Stephanie to come on too, because I know this really affected her. And I do want to acknowledge that. I want to say, guys, just so you guys understand, that all we're presenting to you is academic research. That's all we're doing. Anybody can look this stuff up. I have the same search engines that all y'all have. We got access to the same information. So it does take a lot of digging though. And I just want to put it out there. I know most people understand this. Research is not spell work. Research is not witchcraft. Just because this is going to definitely trigger a lot of people who are very fundamentalist does not mean it's wrong. All right. And after finding this topic, it actually liberated me a lot. I know it liberated Stephanie as well, because the topic of Mithraism is Christianity 1,400 years before they say Jesus came to earth. Okay.
Wow.
So, and I was saying before we went on camera, I didn't know anything about Mithraism until I started researching the missing books of the Bible. And when obviously, you guys know me by now, I'm not just going to read the books and that be that. I want to know about the books. I want to know where they were found. I want to know who potentially wrote them. I want to hear all the different stories. I want to hear all the different perspectives, the commentaries, and I want to know what happened to get these books banned. Like, what did these books do to get themselves banned? Like when your friend gets banned from a bar, there's usually an interesting story behind it. That's the story I want to know. Like, what got these books in trouble, right? Tell me this, right? So that's how I found Mithraism. And I found Mithraism because from what we're told, the first time there was ever a banning of books from the Bible. And guys, just so you know, banning of books is censorship. Plain and simple. So if you don't like the fact that the powers that be are censoring us, but yet you're supporting the censorship of religious texts, then you're not against censorship. You're actually for censorship. So we have to think about it that way. You can't just censor what you don't like. That's what the other side of this war does. Everything needs to be free information, because every human being needs to be able to see everything and make their own decisions. All right. So when I started studying the Council of Nicaea, which they tell us happened in 325 AD, who knows what the real date is, this is where we first had the banning of a bunch of books from the Bible. And this is when Christianity turned into Mithraism. Before the Council of Nicaea, Christianity was not what we see it as today at all. It was more of, they probably had more in common with like India, where there were schools, and the Gnostics, the inner knowing, they taught a lot of the spiritual practices that Shanti and I talk about a lot. You know, that was done. And when you read through the Gnostic text, you see a lot of that, like Magdalene's not manuscript, her gospel, for example, it teaches you how to work through your ego, how to break through the ego. That's very, very much in line with Eastern philosophy, right? So they got rid of all of that. Well, not only did they get rid of all of that, but they concocted a story that was not in line with the actual story of Yahshua, who is the person who was really the Christ, really the teacher of the Christ consciousness. And they basically made Mithraism the official religion. And I'm going to eventually pass it back to Stephanie, but I just want to, there's a Bible verse, John 14:6, where it says, Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. Except Jesus didn't, well, Yahshua didn't say that. Mithra said that 1400 years earlier. So wow. Mithra was born, in some accounts, he was born of a virgin on the 25th of December. Some accounts he was born from stone. He had 12 disciples, promised immortality if you followed him, had communion, which we're going to get into, again, called himself the way, the truth, and the life, practiced blood sacrifice, then was killed for the betterment of the world, buried in a tomb, and rose again 3 days later. Mithras was considered the divine son who promised immortality. And again, predates Christianity by 1400 years. Mithra is considered the mediator between God and man. That sounds familiar, right? And he is also honored as the patron of loyalty to the emperor, otherwise known as the King of Kings.
Wow.
All right. Constantine was Mithraic. Now, we see some of this, you know, they have to tell you the truth at some point. In the story of Jesus's birth, 3 wise men came to see Jesus, right? That's the story we're told. They were called the Magi. Magi is a priest of Mithraism. And if you look at a lot of, I think I sent you a picture, Morné, of the hats. So we see the same hats with the three wise men as Mithra. They wear these red hats. So they're telling you in the Bible that this was a religion of Mithraism. All right. Now, Mithra also is considered the sun god, S-U-N, sun god. He is shown with rays of light coming out of his head, which turned into a halo on Jesus. I think I said, and then also we have it with the Statue of Liberty too. We have the same rays of light. All right. So I think I might have sent you a picture of that as well, Morné. And then I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie too for us after we go through some of just the big, bold points of Mithraism. So the halo we see on Jesus is Mithra's sun rays.
Yeah. As
the sun god, right? Now the Mithraic mysteries were considered, this is where it gets real juicy, guys, real juicy. It's considered to be it was considered to be an upper class religion, a very elite religion, and also with the military industrial complex, which was, they tell us, the Roman army. I'm still a little hesitant about that because it's Tartaria, but for what we know, this was a military industrial complex religion, an elite religion. We hear he's the King of Kings. He's loyal to the emperor, right? They included 7 grades of initiation. So you had to go through initiation to get into this religion. And the initiates called themselves, and I'm probably going to say this wrong because this is a Greek word. I don't know how to speak Greek. Syndexios, which means united by the handshake. Who else do we know gets united by handshakes?
Wow.
Right? They met in underground temples. And when Christianity was invented by Constantine, the Christianity that we know now at the Council of Nicaea, what they did at that point was they gave the public a falsified Mithraism to harness their energy, while they continued, the upper class continued to practice the actual Mithraism in the basement of churches. So in a lot of the old churches we have, especially in Europe, probably here in America too, there are Mithraic temples. I think I sent a picture of one from Rome. That's a very famous one. And so basically, just like we know in their sporting events where they're having their football or soccer or whatever they're doing, underground, they're doing some other shenanigans, right? Same thing with these churches. So in these churches throughout the years, all these people who are none the wiser are up in the main church having their services, worshiping Jesus, taking their communion, while down in the bottom, they're doing their sacrifices to Mithra, because they believe in blood sacrifices. Okay, they all have to take an oath of secrecy. So the upper class has to take an oath of secrecy. And how do we know that that Constantine was not a Christian? He was Mithraic. Well, if you don't take my word for it, take Constantine's word for it. In Rome, Italy, and we might have spoken about this before, and this is something that I would definitely encourage all the viewers to go research for themselves, because we're not specifically talking about Constantine. I just wanted to bring Constantine up because this is where everything starts to unravel. So Constantine told this ferocious story about how he saw a vision of Jesus in this battle and blah, blah, blah. It's all made up. And we know this, first of all, from Eusebius's, which was his biographer, kept having to rewrite his notes. So if you go through all the notes of Eusebius, you see where Constantine is constantly changing his story. And this is because of spiritual manipulation to make himself superior. But at the Ark of Constantine, which is located today in Rome, Italy, who knows if that was where it was originally located? That's for a different topic when Shanti and I go deeper into Tartaria. But it's in Rome, Italy today. It's by the I've actually been by it. At that point, I didn't know. It's right where my mind's gone blank, where the gladiators used to fight.
Oh,
it's right
the Colosseum.
Yeah, Colosseum. That's it. And I think I sent a picture. They don't let you get too close to it, but there are documentaries out there that show the images of the Ark of Constantine. There's no freaking Jesus on the Ark of Constantine, guys. Oh, that's at Hadrian's Wall. So that's another Mithra temple they found at Hadrian's Wall in the border of Scotland and England. But in Italy, I hope I sent it to you. People watching can Google it and see the Ark of Constantine. It talks about Constantine's battle where he beat Maxentius, which they tell us that Constantine was the good guy. He was sainted by the church, but so was Mother Teresa. So come on, guys, if you're going to take sainting seriously, then you got some more research to do, because anybody who's sainted at this point, I'm like, not so sure about that. So he was sainted by the Catholic Church, Constantine. We've been taught that he was this great warrior for Christianity. No, he wasn't. He was like Mr. B team. He was like the controllers, because at that point they tell us in history the Roman Empire was divided into a republic, which is what the United States is supposed to be. And in my opinion, the republic is the best way to govern, because like in the United States, our states are supposed to have their own rights, their own government system, which means that your voice is heard more in your community. And if you live in a huge country, like we live in a big country, Steffi, we can't have people in New York City telling people in Georgia what to do, because it's two totally different areas of the world, different demands, different all sorts of things. So republic helps the people have more of a voice, right? Well, Maxentius, the person they say is the bad guy, was the one that fought against Constantine, and he was the one that wanted to keep the Roman Empire a republic. Constantine was raising taxes on people. Maxentius did not want the taxes to be kind of like the whole Solomon story, right? How did Solomon get wealthy? He taxed people. How did Constantine get wealthy? He taxed people. Maxentius did not want that to happen. Maxentius was actually more of a live and let live kind of guy. Like he didn't really, which was strange for this time. He didn't really care what religion you were. He just kind of wanted people to live and let live. Right? He was like the bohemian hippie of his time. Like, just let's let people live. Let's not tax them. We're not on this earth that long. Let's let them enjoy life. But Constantine wanted to get rid of the republic. He wanted the Roman Empire to basically be a new world that starts with an O. You guys know what we're talking about. And it was not long after Constantine became the emperor that we had the fall of the Roman Empire. Regardless of whether that fall was real or not, we don't know. But obviously, we know that these types of communistic tyrannical governments never work. And this was when Constantine took over the religion too, and made this new religion, Christianity, the religion of the Roman Empire. Once he banned a bunch of books showing that Yahshua was not Mithra. That's all these banned books are. Basically, they couldn't reword them and show you that Yahshua was not crucified. He lived a long time. He taught he was not a god. Constantine was the person that made Jesus a god. What did they call Yahshua? His disciples? They called him rabbi, which means what?
Teacher.
They came to teach you about your own light inside of you, your own connection to God. They came to teach you things that are principles in the yoga practice, about correcting your own karma, working through your own stuff. As Chanti says, your own alchemy, not to rely on something outside of yourself, but to look within yourself. And that's what the Gnostic Gospels are all about. What a beautiful thing you are, that you have this spark of life, that you are not some loser. You're actually a child of the Most High. And that's what him and Magdalene taught. But then Constantine came in the Council of Nicaea, and I know that's going to upset Christians, but you need to research the Council of Nicaea. Don't take what we have learned in this Great Awakening is not to take any type of word for it. Don't take your pastor's word for it. Do your own research. Constantine made Jesus a god. Okay. I had a dream one night where Yahshua came to me and he said, I can't come back until people stop worshiping me. You can't work. I can't come back until people stop this, And so you need to fix yourself. You need to work within yourself. And so with Mithras too, they had a whole celebration of him sacrificing a bull. Well, who is the bull? It's Ba, it's Yahweh. So shedding the blood of Yahweh, or one of Lucifer's henchmen, to save the world. That's where their communion came from. They drank the blood and ate the meat of Lucifer's sacrifice, of the god of Lucifer's sacrifice, not creator God. And then of course, as I said, once Mithra died, he was placed in a tomb and resurrected 3 days later. All right. And in one of these temples down below the church, they're written on the wall, it says, and thou hast saved us by the shedding of the eternal blood. That sounds very Christian-like, doesn't it? But it's written on the wall of a Mithra temple below a Christian church. So whose blood are we talking about when we talk about the shedding of the blood? All right. I'm going to pass it over. I'm going to pass the ball over to Stephanie.
That is
your notes are... Go ahead,
Shanti. I'm just saying that is amazing. Again, I'm sitting here listening just to the subtleties, right? There's just how they would have taken some stuff, tweaked it, twisted it to be what it's not, and now to be what it is. It's crazy. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Stephanie.
Oh, no, that's okay. I have written down almost everything you just said, Brice. To add to that, believers were taught that after Mithras finished his purpose, he ate his last supper with his followers, his 12 disciples, and he was then crucified, and then he rose from the dead on the third day. He ascended into heaven the day he was called upon to separate good and evil until the day of judgment. So that 100% mimics Christianity. And what I really wanted to talk about on my side of things is I was ingrained in the Christian church. Like I said on the program last Monday, I said, I've been out of the church for probably close to, I don't know, July will make a year. So almost a year now. Wow, that went by really, really quick. But I grew up Catholic, and then I was Pentecostal for the remaining of the years that I've been on this planet up until last year. And I do remember that I used to question things like, what is really salvation? What is really born again? Because I wasn't finding the answers in the Bible that, I was looking for. And anytime I had questioned it, pastors would just say, well, look at this scripture, but I was reading the scripture completely different. So there was times when, I sat there and I'm like, is this really real? Like I did question it, but then I would, deny myself, like questioning any further because I felt like I was sinning if I was questioning things, right? Which a lot of Christians I know do now, coming to find out. So I remember being on Brice's show when I first started my channel, September of 2021, and her mentioning this Mithras character, right? And so I then took it upon myself, instead of just hearing it from somebody, I went and I actually did my own research. And I spent hours researching this because I was on multiple websites studying the Council of Nicaea, because this was the beginning of my personal liberation from the religious holds. And what people need to understand too is there's a danger to a religious hold. It's actually an invisible programming that is placed pretty much upon your head. It's a jail cell, really. And this isn't to say to deter yourself from believing in God or anything like that. In fact, my relationship with God has actually become much more closer than it used to be. And there's constraints in religion. There is rigidity in religion. And essentially, like I said, it becomes this jail cell. But when I did all this research, I started to see just all these parallels. I mean, Mithra's story is a parallel. It's a complete identical parallel to what we call Jesus, the Jesus we serve in church. Now, researching into who truly Yahshua ben Joseph was, totally different person. It's not even the same.
Not the same person.
No.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, even the fact that he was born from a virgin mother, if you're looking into Yahshua ben Joseph's story, yeah, Mother Mary was there as the mom, but Joseph was the biological father, because a virgin conception is actually a satanic ritual. So this was the most liberating thing I've ever researched in my whole journey throughout this Great Awakening, because this loosened the grip that the church held on to me. And now I'm starting to actually come into my own. I'm starting to find out who I truly am, because the church doesn't want you to find out who you are. I can't tell you how many times I've had prophetic dreams, visions, all that sorts of stuff, premonitions. And I would tell the church, I mean, even to the point of the thing that people are, putting in their arm. So when I had addressed that with the church, they completely denied me. They belittled me. They said that wasn't accurate. And so I kind of went on this journey of being lost, because it was like I wasn't able to find myself. And what do they say? You have to lose yourself in order to be with God. You have to lose yourself and find Jesus, right? When in actuality, mirror that. No, you need to find yourself by finding God within yourself.
Which is what Yahshua taught.
That's that famous quote that says, I went out and searched for God and could only find myself. And then I went to find myself and I could only find God. There's such a subtle, fine line. And that's the difference between being religious or being a believer, is having that relationship with God. So if you don't have that relationship with God, then this like religious manipulation, this controlled religion will obviously keep you stuck in your guilt, stuck in your regrets, stuck in your stuff like that. So yeah, God is such a subtle thing. I don't, it's not like God was part of us. We are the manifestation of God's creation. I'm not God, but God is me in that sense. So it's so subtle. And if you don't understand that, then you can easily be manipulated and controlled with, I believe, with what religion was supposed to do. I think they created controlled religion for a reason, like they did all other things.
To hold you in a box. And I like to tell people when I kind of explain this is, we're kind of like, we have this vessel we call the body, right? And it's kind of like the lantern. But in order for the lantern to shine brightly, you have to have the light in the lantern. Well, God is within us as the light shining outward through this vessel we call the body, the lantern, right? So I like to make kind of, what do we call it? I can't find the word, to have people, to describe it so that people can understand better. And the other thing I want to point out too is the God that we serve in this church, it's a very narcissistic God.
Genocidal maniac.
It's like, you must believe in me in order to get to heaven. And I don't know about you guys, but I would never want to force anybody to make them love me. That sounds like kind of like a love spell. And there should be no forcing of anything, because there's free will, right?
It's fear.
So that's narcissism.
It's coercion.
Totally.
It's coercion. And for people who don't understand that the God of the Bible is Lucifer, it's Mithraism. And Revelation 21, if you want that proof, you just read Revelation 21. I can read it if you guys want me to read Revelation, the first part of Revelation 21 that tells us this. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, now the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. He will be with his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying of pain, for the old order of things have passed away. He who is seated on the throne saying, I am making everything new. All right. So that's just the first part of Revelation chapter 21. So a new God, which isn't the new God, it's the core, it's Lucifer's contract is up. Right. Mm-hmm. So many Christians don't know this. And I knew this when I was even in the church, because the Bible makes it pretty clear that Lucifer has domain over the earth for a certain time period. It's in the Bible, guys. Lucifer is the God of the Bible. Lucifer demands blood sacrifices. Lucifer demands human on a cross. That's a human blood sacrifice. What do the elites do on these little islands? They do all the rituals that are Mithraic, which they do in secret. We mimic them in the churches, and they do them in secret. But with for real, drinks that they drink, and for real meat that is not animal, whereas we're just eating blood and or crackers and juice as mimicking,
which is the spell casting.
But in Revelation 21, it's telling you. I'm not telling you. The Bible's telling you that when we ascend, when we graduate to fourth density, the source creator is coming down. There's not going to be any more of this blood rituals, right? That's what they're saying. And so I really want people, instead of calling us names, go back and read the Bible. And you said something very interesting, Stephanie, about the girl Rachel Photon and what she said about the Bible.
Yeah. So it's funny you said that, because I was actually just thinking about that a couple minutes ago. So I follow this tarot card reader, oracle reader, that's on a YouTube channel. Her name is Rachel Photon. Well, that's her channel name. And she also was ingrained in the church too, come to find out, until she had a near-death experience. And she explains in her very last live video she did a couple days ago that during her near-death experience, she literally was in the spirit realm, and God had showed her that the Bible was manipulated. And that brought her out of that. But she was in a very, very toxic relationship with a husband during, her time as a Christian. And there were places in the Bible, in the gospel, I think it was in the Gospel of Matthew. And there's a place in there that says, when something about one cheek, turn the other cheek. And then, just allowing people to literally ABUSC you, allowing a narcissist to stomp all over you. Okay, well, if they slap one cheek, give them the other. It's telling you it's okay to be ABUSC'd. So she said that because of those verses, and she's finding out a lot of women have gone through this. And actually, I related to that because this includes myself, not to relieve an abusive relationship, because it's against God. It's like you have to sacrifice yourself, and be be a servant to your husband kind of a thing, because that's what the Bible teaches. So she got out of the constraints of religion just like me. I don't know her personally. I'm just talking based off of what she shared on her last video, because she, like me and Brice, are trying to shed light upon just how toxic the religious constraints have on people. And yes, I was with a very, very nasty, nasty man, my son's father. And I stayed with him as long as I did because the scriptures told me to.
Well, she called this idolatry too, didn't she?
Oh yeah, that's the other thing too. So she said that the Bible tells you not to take any idols and worship them, right? What's the Bible? The Bible is the Bible. You can compare the Bible to like a statue. It's a physical item that you're putting on a pedestal as the divine word of God, and nothing is, that is the pure truth, the pure word of God, and there's nothing that goes above it. That is idolatry. You are idolizing the Bible. You're idolizing a book. You're putting it on a pedestal. So you see where the contradictions are.
And whoever said it was the word of God, the pastor said it was the word of God. Your church
and they got that from
God didn't say that.
And they got that from the hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, another thing too to point out too, like this goes with Catholicism. I'm just like reading my notes real quick. I just saw it, is the pater or the pater. I don't know if it's a flat or hard A there. It means father, which performs blood rituals. And that's the father in the Catholic Church. And that's in Mithraism. So I mean, these parallels are uncanny. You can't deny it. When you do the research, a lot of
the ritualistic, because you talked about that with me about the ritualistic aspects of Catholicism, which I'm sorry, guys, if you're in the Protestant church, I hate to break it to you. I grew up Presbyterian. I grew up in the Protestant church. The Protestant churches took the knee to the Catholic Church. You're under the Pope too.
They all are.
You as well.
Pentecostal, Lutheran. You know,
you are. We had to say that thing every Sunday. I believe in the Holy Catholic Church. As a Presbyterian, we were saying that. Riddle me that, Batman. That means that you're.
It's like awful. It's like such contradiction, really.
And I would ask my mom, because we were taught, that our ancestors came here because of religious freedoms from the Catholic Church, but now we know that's BS because of Tartaria. But I'd be like, well, why are we saying that we believe in the Holy Catholic Church if they're the enemy? Well, that's where it started. So we have to be respectful. I'm like, no. You told me that my ancestors basically came to a wild land because it was so important to them to have religious freedom, but yet now we're taking a knee to the Catholic Church. So I'm sorry, if you're Presbyterian, Baptist, Lutheran, Pentecostal, Episcopalians are my favorite. Whistleblower, they like to party, so they're my favorite. My stepdad is Episcopalian, a Whistleblower. You're taking the knee to the Pope. You're taking the knee to the Pope, which is the father, which is what she was saying. And you were saying, Stephanie, because you grew up Catholic, there's a lot of the way the Catholics, I know the Catholic masses are done very different from like a Protestant service, but what were the similarities between Mithrias? Because they call it the Sunday workout, right? In the Catholic Church.
Oh my gosh, sit, stand, kneel, sit, stand, kneel. I never understood that. And it used to annoy me. I'm like, you get just comfortable in your pew, that really hardwood pew where you can't get comfortable. And now everyone's standing up, and then you're kneeling on this padded thing that still hurts your knees. And it just didn't make any sense. And then you can see the looks in people's faces that couldn't do it because they had a disability of some kind, if they're wheelchair bound, and they feel bad because they can't participate in that. But there's a lot of idolizing in the Catholic Church. And then the whole going to the father, the priest, to do your confession and everything like that. But I mean, to be honest with you, Brice, and all of it parallels all of it. I mean, it's all ritualistic, and the Catholic Church is the most ritualistic of them all. Definitely. But there's still, first of all, communion. Let's talk about that for a second. It's a symbol. It's a symbol of cannibalism and blood drinking. And you really can't deny that, because they tell you, oh, blood of Christ, body of Christ. They're telling you it's body and blood. It's symbolic. So you can't deny that because they flat out tell you that, I mean, so, but who is the Christ? You know, whose blood and body are we eating and drinking? Now, if we go to Jesus, Jesus was not the Christ name. I did a whole breakdown on the name Jesus, which if you look into and you do your research, it can mean a few things, but it can revert to Hail Zeus, which also can be translated to Hail Satan. I did a whole big thing on the Dark Outpost about that. And so there was no such thing as the J back then. They added the J, but the whole changeover of the name was the Council of Nicaea. So you have two different people we're talking about. Two different people.
Why did they change his name? That's like, I always want to say, well, just over time. I'm like, no, they changed his name. It's because it's a different person.
Yeah.
Jesus. And I think I sent you a picture, Morné, of Jesus doing the same hand symbol as the Baphomet.
Mm-hmm.
With the halo. With the there's old Cesare Borgia. Wow. Why is Jesus doing the same hand symbol as the Baphomet, guys?
And guys, he has the halo. So it's the Mithra, the sun worship thing with the halo.
And somebody told me once that the heart, because you see that heart a lot in Catholic illustrations, you don't see that heart that you see on the Jesus picture here. You don't see that a lot on a lot of the Protestant ones. But somebody told me that they have a reason for that, but it really symbolizes how they eat hearts.
Oh dear.
Hearts.
That's kind of that's actually really disturbing.
It's all disturbing and disgusting. Yeah. So even though sometimes, Stephanie, I would say Yahshua are who we call Jesus, but they're actually two different people. They're two totally different people, guys. And why? Why do we have? Because of the contract of Lucifer running this planet. Yeah, so we're going to worship the son of Lucifer, because Lucifer is the god of this planet. That is in your Bible, friends. Yeah. So who's the son of God then? If Lucifer is the god of this planet and Jesus is the son of God, then who is Jesus's father, or Mithra's father? Lucifer. It's all there. We're just the messenger, guys. This is just our research.
It would have to be. Yeah, absolutely.
Common sense. Yeah. Common sense ain't so common though, apparently. So, but listen, guys, I mean, we understand that the hold of religion, of the religious matrix, is going to be one of the hardest things for people to break, because it's dealing with your vulnerability. It's dealing with your mortality. It's dealing with all of that really deep-seated fear. And if it's triggering you, then that's a good thing, because that's showing you where you can actually work through this. And as Shanti says, turn the lead into gold. Now, I wanted to bring something up too about what we talk about this a lot. What is Lucifer? He's the shining light, the illuminated one, right? And there's halos coming out of Mithra's head. Mm-hmm. Mithra is the illuminated one, just like Lucifer. The halo, the sun rays. They're telling you, they're showing you this. And so when I'm like Stephanie, when I start, because I grew up, again, Presbyterian, but I stopped going to church around the age of 17. And I had always, and I've said this before, if you need a book to tell you who God is, then I don't even know what to say. You don't need a book to tell you who God is. God is not confined to a book that was written by humans, right? Not confined to a book written by humans. When I started learning this stuff, I had such a liberation. Even though I had not been in the church for a really long time, I still felt some of those programs, right? That if I don't believe enough, I'm going to go to hell. You know, that's a fun thing. That's a fun little thing they do in Protestant churches. Do you believe Jesus is the Son of God? You say yes. And they're like, are you sure? Are you really sure? Are you sure so they start gaslighting you to become more vulnerable to the cult, because it's a cult, right? To give more money to them. Spend more time there, right? Become vulnerable, create more fear, which creates more loosh. Ding, 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 ding. Fear isn't liberation. Fear is bondage. But when you realize that the true God isn't the God of the Bible, that the true God is pure love, true God's not going to send you to hell. The true God actually has a wicked sense of humor too. He's quite funny. She's quite fun, quite comical. I mean, have you seen our president? Again, have you seen the president of the United States? Don't tell me the true God does not have a sense of humor. So, you know, and nothing's going to happen to you. You're just here in a master class, as our friend Emmy calls it. You're just here working through you. And this is your experience.
And you get many of them. You don't get just one experience. You get many of them. Hence what we would call in the church born again.
Yeah.
And, and the missing books of the Bible do speak about that. So if you start reading the missing books of I figured out the books that they banned were the ones that were the most difficult to change. And so being lazy, they were like, you know what, this one's too difficult to change. Let's just tuck it under the Vatican and, you know, murder anybody who has it, you know. They talk about this. They talk about, Joshua even talks about like, what happens if you don't understand in one life and you pass away before that understanding happens? Joshua says, well, you just come back again. You just come back again. Mm-hmm. You come back as many times as you need. There's no rush. You're an eternal soul. You're not good. Our souls don't die. Mm-hmm. You can take as much time as you need in a very loving way. You know, and yes. So I don't know about your experiences, Shanti, but when I was my times in India, I've noticed that, first of all, in the deep south, everything's freaking haunted. So I always feel when ghosts are around, but I've never felt that in India. I've never felt that. I know there are haunted places there, but I've never felt it like I felt it here. And witnessing so many funerals in India, and where reincarnation is taught, it's from a very young age to the children. You don't seem to have that same, we're all attached to our bodies. We all have some sense of fear about death. That's just human. But there always seemed to be more of a letting go, a relaxed nature in India about this thing called mortality, right? There was kind of an acceptance from it seemed like people kind of accepted where they were in life because that was their karma to live out, you know. And that's when I think about all the funerals, you know, we go to these funerals here in America. What do we wear at a funeral? We wear all black. Well, what is black? We talk about the Saturnalian brotherhood. Black, why do judges wear black? Why do we wear black when we graduate? It's because you've graduated into the cult of Saturn, which Saturn in its original template is good, but the template they've inverted is the cult of Satan. You've now graduated into the cult of Satan. Why do we wear black at a funeral? Hello? You go to an Indian funeral? Have you seen the Indian funeral, Shanti? It's a freaking party.
It's a great big party. Absolutely.
It's colorful. There's my friend, when we were our first trip to India, she lived right beside me. It was during Diwali, and she put this video on Facebook of this parade going down the street thinking it was Diwali. And we were watching, we were like, Vivian, that's a funeral. Because it's so, you know, that's not what we're used to. You know, they have the body up, they're celebrating. There's a huge, and I know that there's mourning. I know there's sadness, obviously, but it's very different from how we are. And Stephanie, you spoke about with you that you had this overwhelming fear of death because you didn't know.
Yeah, I can discuss that in depth. Oh boy. So I have struggled with anxiety most of my life, but it would be over like schoolwork, getting my homework done because I had a hard time focusing, you know, stupid stuff like that. When I got into the Pentecostal church, it turned, I was never fearful of death as a child. Never. When I got into the Pentecostal church, that fear became something really real to the point where I actually had to go to counseling for it. It was that harsh. And I worked, there was one point of my life in my mid-20s when that fear got crippling. And I remember going to a doctor and explaining to them, you know, I was having some weird feeling where I felt like when I woke up in the morning, I felt like my hands were getting like huge. It was like I was like half asleep. It's called Alice in Wonderland syndrome, go figure. But I remember that I saw a doctor and they scared me thinking it was seizures. And so when I got in my car to drive a half an hour away to work, I thought I was going to have a seizure and actually crash my car and die. So I had this unreasonable fear with no concrete evidence that this was actually going to happen. It was just, the doctor scared me and didn't even perform any tests or anything like that. So I remember being on the highway and I'd have to pull over literally every 10 minutes, even sometimes every 5 minutes, depending on how that anxiety got, because I was so fearful I was going to prematurely die and end up in hell because I was so-called living in sin, which I really had a very sheltered life, but the church kept telling me I was living in sin. Every church that I went to told me, you're living in sin. You're living in sin. You're not going to be raptured if Jesus Christ comes back on a white cloud or horse, whatever they say. You know, in other words, you're not amounting to anything that this church wants you to amount to. It's like a mother saying, okay, you're a nobody because you're not getting good grades.
You're not good enough.
You know, yeah, you're not good enough. And so I had this feeling all the time that something bad was going to happen to me and I was going to die and end up in the horrible pits of hell with fire and brimstone. And it got to the point where the anxiety attacks were so bad, I had to get on a pharmaceutical for it. And that's not good either. And I mean, it didn't help. And I forced myself to fight that anxiety and everything. And that fear continued with me for a long, long time, up until last year. And when I started to figure out that we are eternal beings and we do have past lives, it was probably the biggest weight off my shoulder that has ever come off my shoulder. I cannot tell you how liberating that was, because I do not fear death anymore. I can get into my...
Wow.
It was horrible. It was crippling. It was literally crippling.
It was called
Sorry, I just wanted to say, you know, in my household, in my family, that was something we were born with. Reincarnation was something that that was the way that it was, you know. So I can imagine that after all those years of believing you're going to be burning in hell, if this and if that and if not that and whatever, and suddenly to realize the truth. That's a big thing. Wow, that must be incredibly amazing.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I still had my religious programming for a while. I remember when Brice and I first were discussing that Yahshua was just a teacher. That, I don't know if Brice knew how much it triggered me. I'm like, what are you telling me? He's not the son of God. Like in my head, I'm like, maintain composure.
That's the Council of Nicaea.
Yeah, I still had that religious programming. So if you guys do, like, to the audience, if you don't think I was triggered by any of this, oh, I was, but I'm not outward about my triggers. I don't lash out at people because that's just not nice. And so I didn't just dismiss it though, because if I was triggered, there was some sort of truth about it. So I did my own digging. And
so
it wasn't even just
Sorry, just it's so good to keep a watch on those triggers, because this is a beautiful example of what you're saying now. As you were triggered, it actually led you to a deeper place of awareness, because that's why we get triggered, is because your body is showing you, and look where it led. That's beautiful. So it's a real.
This whole journey too, honestly, was God led too. God specifically, and I hear the voices of, you know, the angels and my ancestors and God and Yahshua and everything like that. And I have a very close relationship with the spirit of Yahshua, and always have, just didn't realize, you know, it was closer to me than I thought. And I always was told, oh, it's just a voice in your head. I actually can differentiate who is actually talking to me. No, I'm not schizophrenic. And actually, that's a whole other subject. But anyways, I remember sitting in church one day, and our church didn't do the communion every single Sunday. It was once a month. And I remember this very, very stern voice saying, do not touch that. Do not partake in this. And I'm like, okay, why not? It's a satanic ritual. Oh my God. And then I start, just due to the voice in my head, whatever spirit was talking to me, which I know it was God, I went home and I started to look at this. What is communion, right? And I was like disgusted. So I continued to go to church, just not taking communion. And then it was the next step. You are no longer going to be coming back to this place. Are you sure? Yes. Well, why not? And I'm having an argument with God over this, because again, my religious programming, you don't need church to know me. This is not where you're going to know me. I need you to work on you. I need you to find you. I need you to love yourself. That's the other thing the church does. They tell you you'll love yourself if you love Jesus, like kind of a thing. Like if you find Jesus, then, you know, it's all happiness and bliss and unicorns and rainbows, but that's not reality of it. You know how many times I tried to find Jesus and only got myself more lost, more in distress, more anxiety, more holding and gripping onto a low frequency. It was miserable. There was nothing good that ever came out of it. I mean, I went, that was my soul contract, and I won't regret being a part of that, because my soul learned a lot from that. That was just part of my mission here on earth.
And that's the same story a lot of people have about their experiences. I mean, I watch a lot of channels from people that come from all sorts of different religious backgrounds that have left whatever folds they were in, and it's the same thing. It generated fear, it generated anxiety, especially for women who are in, I know this is not just true with the Christian faith, we see this in a lot of faiths where women are considered second-class citizens. I know in the deep Baptist faith, I've done a lot of deep dives with the IBLP with Bill Gothard, and the whole Josh Duggar thing that just happened here in the United States, where he's part of this huge, like, super conservative Baptist family. And he just got popped for and arrested at 33 years old for having a bunch of videos of certain things that involve children. And he's a huge personality. And his wife now is stuck because she doesn't have an education. They practice quiverful, or they just have as many kids as possible. So she's got all these kids, and she has no education. She has no way to leave. And her husband's now in federal prison. Like, this system stinks. And women, I know David Zublik told me once, that, I hope he doesn't mind repeating this, that someone got upset because Jessie as a woman had led a prayer on the show. Women, wake up. Wake up. If you have a daughter, Chantelle, you have a granddaughter. Would you ever want someone telling her that she's not really a human because she's a woman?
You know, there again, Brice, you talk about the stuff that's been suppressed, and talk about all the knowledge that's been suppressed. I mean, this takes it to a whole different level, because if we just look at the state of the consciousness of the planet that has been for the last X amount of decades and centuries, feminine consciousness has been suppressed. So in other words, when our emotions have been suppressed, our emotions represent, it's the feminine energy within the body, and it represents the feminine aspect of who we are. So when we look at how that has been manifesting on the planet physically, it's women, right, who've been suppressed. So as we then slowly but surely, and that's exactly what has happened. So as we slowly but surely start awakening to how amazing we as women are. I mean, we are walking miracles. We create babies inside of us. We grow babies. I mean, that in itself, think about what that means. You are a miracle. And it's amazing how unfortunately, the unwise masculine energy, and I'm not just talking about males, because women and we both have masculine and feminine energy. So the unwise masculine energy, which lives alive and well in most females, by the way, you know, until that energy starts also wisening up and understanding, you know, that male is not stronger than female. It's like two halves of the whole that have to fit in together. When one's on top of the other, it's imbalanced. You know, we fit beautifully in together, and one balances the other, you know, each one containing its own special task, its own special vibration, its own special purpose, and it's, you know, within the equation. So one can never be more important than the other. And anyone who thinks that is so wrong. We have to step back and realize that without the feminine force, there can be no creation. Feminine force is creation. Masculine force is the thought, it's the idea, like, you know, the thought, the seed. I mean, think about how babies get born as well. It's the seed, or the idea, the seed that comes from the male. The feminine receives it and creates a baby from it.
And you know, well, Mithraism, they didn't allow women in Mithraism.
Wow.
Yeah. And I wanted to add to what you were saying, Shanti, because everything you said, it's so true. And it's even true with the masculine, because if you take a man, for instance, you know, whether you're a man or female, we both have both aspects. We have a feminine energy and a masculine energy, and they really have to be in balance with each other. And if you look at the majority of the masculine, so the men, you know, on the planet right now, we have a lot of this aggressive energy, right? There's tons of this masculine aggressive energy. However, they have removed a lot of the feminine energy from the masculine too, to kind of bring itself back into balance and have more of that empathic type of traits, you know? Because what are they told men? Oh, if you go tell your emotions to somebody, you're weak. That is putting the feminine energy out of balance of a man.
Totally. That's suppression of emotion. And that's sacral chakra stuff. So, and that's why when that's suppressed, there's a lot of the male energy. That's why it's easy for male energy to hunt, to kill, to go to war, because that sacral chakra energy has been, which is the creative force, which that has been disconnected. And it's all about reconnecting. You know, we got to see the perfection in everything. You know, Lucifer is perfect. Satanic ritual abuse is perfect. Now, don't get me wrong, please. I'm not saying it's right.
Yeah.
But there's perfection in every single experience if we are prepared to just sit with it and receive the anointing, really, of the Christ consciousness, because that's what happens when you get your answers. It's really being in tune with Christ or the Christ consciousness or God. Same thing.
Yeah. And that's all Magdalene and Yahshua taught. It was about you doing, they basically taught what Shanti teaches. That's what they did. And Magdalene keeps telling me that she wants everybody to know that she wore the pants in their relationship. Speaking of masculine and feminine.
The feisty one.
Oh, no doubt.
She said Yahshua was quite lazy. She had to be the one to kind of. You made a funny joke the other day. We were filming and you pulled up the Empress card. And what did she say through me?
Oh my God.
She brings all the boys to the yard. That was her.
That was a funny show. If you guys haven't watched that, that was a funny show.
And she goes, my milkshake brings all the boys to the yard.
Wow.
But I wanted to, before I forget, because I've forgotten twice here, I also wanted to bring up something, not to do with Mithraism, but the church in general. And this is really going to be kind of eye-opening to those who are really, really still trapped in that prison of religion. When the before the Great Awakening occurred, there was a government, I think it was an NDA of some kind. It was some sort of contract that thousands of priests and pastors had signed, that when the NWO was going to start shifting people into camps for not doing this, that these pastors and priests would be telling their congregations it's okay to go. They were part of it. The whole, like, this whole apocalypse thing that was going to occur if certain people did not put their foot down to it, they were going to lure people in pretty much to these slaughterhouses. So if you can actually go and look it up. Brice, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what it's called?
No, because I was already I've been at the church for a very long time, but I know all the pastors. I mean, we showed this on Zulik's channel, and I'm sure maybe Jesse shared from the other lady who's a whistleblower about these big mega pastors and what they have to do in order to be big mega pastors. And they basically go through all the same rituals that we've learned to understand now. And at the end, they have to sell their soul to the devil. They have to sell their soul to Satan. So you can't, and that's one thing that gets me just so upset. I don't want, out of everything we've learned in this Great Awakening is literally you cannot take somebody's word for it. Don't even take our word for it. Go do your own research. We're just presenting you with information that you now can go research yourself. If you're taking your pastor's word for it, I mean, again, what was Mithra? He was the mediator between God and man. So you're treating your pastor that way. Why? Yeah. Why? You can talk to God. You can talk to God. Why do you have to go through your pastor to check on your moral standards? If you don't know right from wrong, then you don't need religion, you need morals.
Yeah.
No, children
born with that.
You're born with that.
Completely born with that.
Don't give your power away. You don't know who your pastors really are. You don't know what's actually, I'm sure that there are a lot of preachers and pastors out there that are really good people and they think they're doing what's right. I'm sure there are, but there are also a lot out there that are psychopaths that are doing the bidding of the controllers. And it's up to you. You can't control what anybody else does, but you can control you. And it's up to you to have that moment of awareness that your pastor is because they went to seminary school. Well, guess what? Follow the money.
University.
Follow the money.
Yeah.
Who owns the seminary schools?
Yeah, exactly.
I just heard in my head, and I'm gathering this is probably coming from viewers thinking that, we've been deceived, so now we're deceiving. You know how they say in the end times, there will be many who deceive you. I know that programming. I want you guys to know, the viewers, that this is based off of research. If you would just let go of that precious book for one moment and step outside the boundaries of the boxed in church and look at the actual evidence, this isn't about deception. This is actual facts. Again, people can believe what they want to, but I will say this. I've been trapped in that religious box and it was not a fun time. It was miserable. I was depressed. I had so much anxiety. My gifts were suppressed. Everything about me was suppressed. And it wasn't about becoming rebellious and leaving that boxed in lifestyle, right? It was more or less, I was liberated from a jail cell, the jail cell of my mind. That's what they want. They want you to stay in a very low vibration because there's your loosh. They feed off of that. So, and I've been through this. I deprogrammed myself. When I first bought, this is the first tarot deck. I was called to buy this. And I sat there shuffling going, God, if I'm sinning, you need to tell me. Never got told no. And I do hear from God. God was like, go for it. This is one of your gifts. This is how you're going to start channeling. I said, are you sure? Are you sure? I kept asking, are you sure? Are you sure? Yes, go for it. Do it. I was encouraged. And when I started to do it, I started to help people. I never tell people to do with the cards, but I always give them some sort of words of wisdom. So I was helping people. And so not only was I liberating myself, but I was actually doing what I was called to do here on earth, is to help people, help humanity, along with you wonderful souls.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what a wonderful journey this is. It's all coming together at this time, which honestly is so super exciting. Really, really is. And again, I've just looked at this time and I actually can't flip and believe it.
I know. This show went by fast.
I felt like 30 minutes. There I am again. Wow, ladies, I say thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, Stephanie, it's so wonderful. And please join us again. You're such a wonderful energy to have join us. And
thank you.
All these wonderful topical topics that we chat about. It's amazing. So, and Brice, thank you as always for what you're putting in and the research you do and these amazingly interesting topics you bring to our shows. It's so interesting. I'm going to re-listen to this show. I got to tell you. I'm going to actually sit and listen to this again tonight before I go to bed. While I'm busy washing my dishes, I'll be listening to this podcast. That's for sure.
And I encourage everyone, do your own research. Like with what we say, we're just giving this the surface. Do your own research into this.
Wasn't hard to find either. And I'm technologically impaired. If I can do it, everybody can.
Everyone can, yeah. Well, is there anything else you ladies would like to say in closing? Starting with you, Steph, is there anything you'd like to say to just as we end up?
I'll just say, if you're triggered by this, look at it as a positive thing. I was triggered too. Every bit of it I was triggered with, because it went against my programming. But just be encouraged that, do the research and then you make up your mind for yourself. We're not forcing any kind of belief system on you. We would never do that. And this is free will. But I will say, if you are trapped in that type of lifestyle of the religious belief system, there is a major liberation that comes from that. And I do highly encourage people to just look on your own, do your research. And, God will never lead you astray. God within you will never lead you astray.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Magdalene, well, she said this before on a show, and after I delivered her message, I got a lot of emails from people just thanking Magdalene. She's telling me right now, because you guys, I've heard her since I was 16. If you're feeling confused right now, and that's an awful place to feel, or if you're feeling you don't know what to believe and you're having this moment of despair, if you call on her, on Magdalene or Yahshua, not Jesus, Yahshua, our source creator, they will come and they will hold you and you will feel their presence around you. Her presence is one of such love. And so many people, last time she gave this message, I got so many emails from people thanking me that they had done that and they just felt her holding them. And, Magdalene, we see her as this sassy little broad, but she was also a mother too. She had 5 children with Yahshua. She was also a mother too, and so she knows how to hold her children. And so even if you're a 70-year-old, 80-year-old, and you're feeling confused because all of a sudden everything's unraveling, just call on her and she'll be there and she'll hold you and love you. Because that's all it's about, is love. It's not about dogma. It's not about rules. It's all just about this unbelievable. It gets me kind of emotional when I think about how much she loves. She is part of the Yahshua Christ teaching. How much love there is. It's unhuman, this love. And she'll come. If you call her, you have to call her because it's free will and consent, but she will come and she will love on you and hold you until you feel like you can stand up on your feet again.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Wow.
Yay. Thank you. That's beautiful. And that's so true because, I see Magdalene as being the feminine aspect of
Yahshua, the Christ.
Yeah. Okay, I was about to say, should I say Jesus or Yeshua? I'm so and used to saying Yeshua. Okay, from now on.
It took me a few months to get used to the changeover. But I think it's all on your intention. It's all about intention.
Yeah.
She likes to be called Maggie too. She just told me that she actually prefers to be called Maggie. Apparently that's what her dad called her, was Maggie. And so Magdalene was actually her name. It was never Mary. It was Magdalene. They that's a whole other topic for another day, but her name was actually Magdalene. And so her daddy called her, she just called him Daddy. Her daddy called her Maggie. And so you can call her Maggie. That's what we call her off camera, and we call Yahshua Yashi. Oh, Yashi. So
you gotta imagine, I'm sure they had nicknames too, guys. Like, they were just human. They were human like us.
Of course they were.
That's why they understand us.
Mm-hmm.
Of course they were. And they were not exactly squeaky clean. They were naughty. They were naughty. Anyway, on that note, let's not get too involved with what they did.
Oh my goodness.
I send you all lots and lots of love. Thank you so much for watching another episode of our beautiful Magic Monday with Brice and Stephanie. Really, really enjoyed this. I enjoy every Monday, but this is also, wow, just such an unusual topic. One I actually haven't heard of and haven't had any kind of understanding or knowledge of. So I'm glad. I'm definitely going to be watching this again and checking out what's going on. Awesome, guys and girls. Thank you so much. If you haven't already, please give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. We're on Facebook, Twitter, BITCHUTE, Aquarius Rising Africa, as well as Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa, and Rumble and ODYSEE, and Telegram. I don't know if I said that. Okay. That's awesome. God bless you all. Bye.
Bye.